My younger sister stole my fiancé 1 week before my wedding and got pregnant. Years later, they begged me to adopt their daughter, but my revenge was saying no and watching them face the consequences of their own betrayal. I'm 32 years old. I work as an accountant at a mid-sized firm, and I need to tell this story because what happened 7 years ago, I basically destroyed my family in ways I'm still processing. My name is Sarah, and I guess it all started when I was 25 and was planning what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, my wedding to James. Though looking back, the signs were there long before. I was just too in love or maybe too blind to see them. James and I had been together for 3 years when he proposed. It was at the Italian restaurant where we had our first date, all very romantic, with the ring hidden in the dessert and everything. I was on cloud nine. Literally couldn't stop looking at the ring. It was a classic solitaire. Nothing extravagant, but perfect for me. My sister Emily was there that night. We'd invited her because, well, she was my younger sister, and we'd always been close. Or so I thought. She was 22 at the time, had always been the baby of the family, the spoiled one. But I never thought that would turn her into what she ended up becoming. I remember when James proposed, Emily clapped and cheered along with everyone else in the restaurant. But now that I think about it, there was something in her eyes, something I couldn't identify at the time, but now I recognize perfectly as pure envy. My parents were happy about the engagement. They adored James, said he was the perfect son-in-law, civil engineer, good job, respectable family, everything traditional parents could want for their daughter. Emily had always been different from me, more outgoing, more daring. Let's say she liked being the center of attention and usually got it. I was the responsible sister, the one who got good grades, who never caused trouble, who followed the rules. Emily was the one who came home late, who changed boyfriends every 3 months, who my parents always justified saying, "That's just how she is, she'll mature." The age difference between us was only 3 years, but sometimes it seemed like I was 10 years older. By the way, I had to take care of her, or cover for her when she got in trouble. During the months after the engagement, I started planning the wedding with my mom and Emily's help. James wasn't one of those men who get very involved in wedding details. He'd tell me, "Whatever you want, love," and I was happy making all the decisions. Emily started coming over to our apartment more often, said she wanted to help with the preparations, that she was excited to be my maid of honor. At first, everything seemed normal, even fun. The three of us choosing flowers, tasting cakes, looking at dresses. But after a few weeks, I started noticing Emily would stay longer than necessary, finding excuses to be there when James got home from work, laughing too hard at his jokes that honestly weren't that funny. And she started dressing differently when she knew he'd be there. More makeup, lower necklines, you know what I mean? One day, about 2 months after the engagement, I came home early from work because my stomach was upset, and I found Emily in our apartment, alone. She said she'd come to drop off some invitation samples and that James had told her she could wait there. It seemed weird, but I didn't think much of it. I mean, she was my sister, right? What an idiot I was. The following weeks, Emily always had some reason to be near James. She needed his opinion on the wedding music, wanted him to drive her to see the reception venue because I was busy. Things like that. And James, well, he seemed normal. Maybe a little more distant with me, but I attributed it to work stress and wedding preparations. The bomb exploded exactly 1 week before the wedding. 1 fucking week. We had everything ready. The dress hanging in my parents' closet, invitations sent, catering paid, everything. My parents called me on a Sunday morning saying we needed to have an urgent family meeting, to come to their house immediately. I remember, James was weird that morning, wouldn't look me in the eyes. Said he had to go see his parents, but would see me later. I should have suspected something, but honestly my mind was on 1,000 wedding things. When I got to my parents' house, everyone was in the living room. My parents, Emily, and to my surprise, James with his parents. My first thought was someone had died or something because everyone had long faces. My mom was crying. My dad looked like he'd aged 10 years. I sat down and my mom took my hand, and that's when I knew something very bad was happening. Emily couldn't look at me. She was sitting in the single armchair with her hands in her lap, and then she said it. Just like that, "I'm pregnant." My first reaction was confusion. Like, okay, my sister is pregnant, why all the drama? But then she added, looking at the floor, "With James's baby. I'm 9 weeks pregnant with James's baby." The world stopped. I literally felt like someone had knocked all the air out of my lungs. 9 weeks. 9 fucking weeks. Meant this had started right after our engagement, when we were choosing the wedding date, when I was at my happiest. I looked at James and he was just sitting there, head down like a coward. Nobody was talking. The silence was so heavy you could cut it with a knife. Then my mom, my own mother, said something I'll never forget. "Sarah, we need to handle this as a family. Emily didn't want this to happen. It was a mistake. But now there's a baby involved." A mistake? A fucking mistake? I stood up so fast I knocked over the coffee table, and before I could process what I was doing, I crossed the room and slapped Emily with all my strength. The sound echoed through the whole house, and she brought her hand to her cheek while starting to cry. My dad grabbed my arm and yelled at me to calm down. That violence didn't solve anything, and I laughed. A bitter, broken laugh. Because seriously? My sister sleeps with my fiancé, gets pregnant, and I'm the bad one for slapping her? James finally spoke. Said he was sorry. That he didn't know how it happened. That he loved me but also had feelings for Emily. Feelings. As if that justified anything. James's parents were sitting there like statues, his mom mumbling something about doing the right thing for the baby. And then I understood that this meeting wasn't to support me or ask for my forgiveness. It was to tell me that James and Emily were going to be together, that they were going to have this baby, and that I had to accept it because we're family. I told them all to go to hell, grabbed my things, and left. As I was leaving, I heard my mom yelling not to be dramatic, to talk like adults. But I was done with all of them. That was the last time I spoke to my family for a long time. I found out later from Lauren, my best friend since kindergarten, that James and Emily got married 2 weeks later in a private ceremony, just the parents present. 2 weeks. They didn't waste time, did they? The following months were hell. I moved to another city, got a temporary job at a small accounting firm, and basically dedicated myself to destroying myself. I started drinking every night. First a glass of wine, then 2, then the whole bottle, then bourbon, vodka, whatever it took to not think. I'd go to work hungover, come home and drink until I passed out. I lost like 15 kilos. Not because I wanted to. I just couldn't eat. The depression was so heavy. There were days I couldn't even get out of bed. I'd call work saying I was sick, and technically I wasn't lying. I was sick with pain, rage, humiliation. 8 months after the betrayal, I hit rock bottom. I'd lost my job from too many absences, ran out of money, and the landlord gave me 48 hours to vacate the apartment. I was sitting on the empty floor with a bottle of cheap vodka when Lauren showed up at my door. I don't know how she found me. I think she'd been tracking me for months. She saw me in that deplorable state and started crying, hugged me while I completely broke down, and said, "You're coming with me right now." I didn't even have the strength to argue. Lauren saved my life. Literally. She took me to her house, forced me to eat, accompanied me to AA meetings, sat with me while I vomited all the poison I'd accumulated, both the alcohol and the pain. She got me job interviews, lent me clothes to look presentable, reminded me every day that I was worth it, that what they'd done to me didn't define me. It was 8 months of intense emotional rehabilitation. But little by little, I started climbing out of the hole. I got a new job, started therapy, stopped drinking, started running in the mornings. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. 2 years after the betrayal, when I was finally starting to feel like myself again, Lauren called me one afternoon. Her voice was strange, cautious, and I knew something had happened. "Sarah, I need to tell you something. And you can hang up if you want, but I think you should." "No." James had an accident. A truck hit him head-on on the highway. He was in the hospital for 4 days. "Sarah, he died yesterday." I don't know what I expected to feel. Maybe satisfaction, karma finally doing its job. But what I felt was nothing. A strange emptiness. I thanked Lauren for telling me and hung up. I went to the funeral. I know it sounds masochistic, but I needed to see it. I needed to close that chapter somehow. I sat in the back, with dark glasses and a hat, like a spy in my own past life. I saw Emily at the front, dressed in black, with a pregnant belly. Yes, she was pregnant again, and a small girl by the hand. Grace. My niece I'd never met. Must have been about 2 years old. She was identical to Emily when she was little. The same blonde hair, the same green eyes. My parents were there, holding Emily while she cried dramatically. James's parents looked devastated. I left before the service ended. Didn't want to risk anyone recognizing me. 6 months after the funeral, my mom showed up at my door. I don't know how she got my address, probably through Lauren, though she swore she didn't give it to her. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked older, more tired, with completely gray hair. She brought Grace with her, now almost 3 years old, and my heart squeezed because the girl was beautiful, innocent of all the drama surrounding her. My mom didn't waste time. Told me Emily had glioblastoma, an aggressive brain tumor that doctors gave her between 1 and 4 years to live, if she was lucky. I was in shock. Yes, I hated Emily. But terminal cancer at 27 is brutal for anyone. Then my mom dropped the real reason for her visit. They wanted me to adopt Grace when Emily died. She said they'd discussed it as a family without me, obviously, that James's parents were too old to raise a young girl, that my parents couldn't handle the responsibility at their age either, and that I was the logical choice. The logical choice. As if I hadn't excluded me from the family for years. As if they hadn't chosen Emily over me. As if now that things were bad, I had to fix everything. I told my mom I'd think about it, but I wasn't promising anything. She left crying, saying Emily wanted to talk to me, to please forgive her, that the family needed to come together in these difficult times. Grace said goodbye with her little hand, and something inside me broke a little. That girl wasn't guilty of anything. I spent an entire week without sleeping, thinking about the proposal. On one hand, the idea of raising the daughter of the woman who betrayed me and the man I loved was psychological torture. I wasn't sure I could handle. Every time I saw Grace, I'd see them, remember everything. On the other hand, Grace was my blood, my niece, a girl who soon wouldn't have a mom and who wasn't guilty of how she was conceived. Lauren listened to me go round and round on the topic for hours, told me any decision I made would be fine, that I didn't owe anyone anything. In the end, I called my mom and told her I couldn't adopt Grace. I explained it wasn't fair to the girl to have a mother who might unconsciously resent her, that I was still healing, that I wasn't ready to be a mother, and much less in those circumstances. My mom cried, told me I was selfish, that Emily was going to die knowing her daughter would be helpless. I told her James's parents and they could take care of her perfectly well, that I could be part of her life as an aunt, but not as a mother. She hung up without saying goodbye. 2 weeks later, I made the decision to go see Emily. Not for her, not for my parents, but for me. I needed to face this once and for all. I arrived at my parents' house on a Saturday afternoon. My dad opened the door and almost fell from surprise. He took me to the living room where Emily was on the couch. She looked terrible, had lost all her hair from chemo, was super thin, with deep dark circles. When she saw me, she immediately started crying. I'm not going to lie and say it was a beautiful movie-type reunion, where we hugged and everything was magically fixed. It was uncomfortable, painful, full of long silences. Emily apologized like 1,000 times, said she'd been an idiot, that guilt had been eating her alive even before the diagnosis, that she knew she didn't deserve my forgiveness but needed it to be able to leave in peace. I told her the truth, that I didn't know if I could completely forgive her, but I didn't hate her anymore. That cancer was a bigger punishment than anything I could wish on her. We talked about Grace, about how smart she was, how funny, how stubborn like her mom. Emily told me she understood my decision not to adopt her, that she just wanted me to be part of her life somehow. After that visit, I started going more often. Not every day or every week, but maybe once or twice a month. I got to know Grace, played with her while Emily rested, read her stories, took her to the park. The girl started calling me Aunt Sarah, and every time she did, I felt a mix of love and pain I can't describe. Emily and I never went back to being the sisters we were, that died the day she decided to betray me, but we reached a point of, peaceful coexistence. We could be in the same room, talk about superficial things, share moments with Grace. Emily held on for 3 more years, much longer than the doctors expected. She said it was for Grace, that she couldn't leave until making sure she'd be okay. The last months were horrible. She lost mobility. Speech became difficult, but she kept fighting. I went more often then, helped my parents with caregiving, took Grace to school when they couldn't. It was strange, after all the pain and rage, seeing her so vulnerable, so human, So fragile. Emily died on a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 years after our first conversation since the betrayal. I wasn't there. It was my mom who called me. The funeral was small, family only. This time I sat with my family. I held Grace's hand while she cried for her mom. It was in that moment I knew I'd made the right decision about the adoption. Grace needed stability, routine, not another big loss. James's parents and my parents organized to take care of her, and I promised to be the best aunt I could be. It's been 2 years since Emily died. Grace is 7 now. She's in second grade. She's a happy girl considering everything. She lives with James's parents, mainly, but spends many weekends with me. I've told her about her mom, the good things, the nice memories from when we were kids. I've never told her the full story, and I don't know if I ever will. My parents and I have rebuilt something resembling a relationship, though it will never be the same. There are wounds that don't heal completely. You just learn to live with the scars. Last week, Grace asked me if she'd ever have cousins to play with. I told her maybe, that Aunt Sarah was still working on that. She laughed and said that was okay, that meanwhile she could be my favorite baby. I told her she always would be, and I meant it. Because in the end, after all the pain, the betrayal, the loss, the forgiveness, Grace is the only truly good thing that came out of this mess. I don't raise her as my daughter, but I love her as if she were. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's how broken families heal, not by going back to what they were, but by becoming something different, something new, something that works even if it's not perfect.